Welcome to Americana Archives. Today's headline is Battle of Bull Run. The subheadline says, The Graphic Story Told by a New Haven Soldier. It says, Were you at the Battle of Bull Run? A New Haven veteran was recently asked. Well, yes, I was there. I wasn't exactly in the battle, but I helped the run part of it all I could. Run was no name for it. It was a race, the biggest skedaddle that ever was on Earth. I saw more ridiculous sights that hot Sunday afternoon, and laughed more than a man will ordinarily laugh in 10 years. You see, the time of the free monthsmen was out, but the army was ready to move forward on Manassas, and the regiments took votes to decide whether they should go forward or demand discharge. There was a company of New York artillery, well-to-do men, butchers I believe they were, who had provided their own battery and outfit, and who voted to go home. And as they moved to the rear, a perfect storm of hoots and jeers assailed them, but they didn't notice it. I don't know of any others who voted not to go forward. At that time, I was detailed to drive a 4-horse team for General Keyes, who had command of these Connecticut regiments and the 2nd Maine. It was my business to move his personal baggage, and I had a splendid team of horses. The wagon had a white canvas top, which opened at both ends. I sat outside the top, the front curtains closed behind me. I moved out to Falls Church, 9 miles into Virginia, then moved forward to Centerville. At 2 o'clock on Sunday morning, July 21st, the general's mess chest, 10 gallons of whiskey, groceries, 2 officers' tents, and 2 young girls were loaded into my wagon, and I was ordered to drive ahead. Our troops were close upon the Johnnies, and a battle that day was considered a dead moral certainty, and an overwhelming victory was believed to be quite assured. The 2 girls were going to the front as officers' cooks. A continual stream of army wagons was pouring along the road, and of these civilians on horseback in carriages and buggies, containing Washingtonians whose voices were still for war and who were ambitious to take part in it by eyesight at a very safe distance. It was 7 o'clock before I was allowed to swing into the long current and move forward. It was a very sluggish stream. As I reached the top of the hill, Quartermaster Hodge of our brigade ordered me to turn out and halt under the shade of a tree. I did so. The contents of the wagon were removed, a fire was built, and the girls prepared breakfast. I took a share. Then laying down beside my wagon, I fell asleep, for I had slept little or none for 2 nights. It was near noon when I awoke, and firing had been heard at the front for some time. There was a lull for an hour, and then it resumed fiercer than ever. In another hour, horsemen and carriages came tearing down the road, their riders and drivers shouting, turn back, drive for your lives, the Rebs are upon us." Along came a hack containing 4 congressmen. Each man sat with a cocked revolver in his hand, and all yelling to the driver to drive for his life. I expected to be made prisoner in a few minutes, and the prospect was not a pleasant one. But I had to stop the work of loading on my wagon and laugh at those 4 heroic legislators, brandishing their pistols, threatening their driver in one breath and offering big wealth in the next if he would get them back to Washington. The current in the narrow road turned and rushed backwards. I watched my chance and turned into it. As I did so, a big Dutch settler with a wagon load of goods, and turning around, upset his wagon into the ditch beside the road. He jumped to the ground and took to his heels, leaving his horses struggling to free themselves from the harness. It seemed as if the very horses had caught the panic and were as anxious to go north as the men. Every few rods I came to wagons deserted or broken down and attempting to get ahead by turning out. I saw teamsters draw the tailboard of their wagons and let their freight fall out into the road while ascending the hills. The fields on either side of the road swarmed with horses and soldiers in full rout. Artillerymen had cut the traces from the guns and had ridden away before a shot came near them. There were regular army men, and in my 4 years at the front, the poorest soldiers I saw were regular army men. If ever men made good time, these soldiers did. The afternoon was terribly sultry and hot. The men ran in all stages of undress uniform, even a shirt and drawers. Few knapsacks were to be seen. Many had thrown away their guns, but some trailed them on the ground behind them. I was troubled with but few applications for a ride, because my team's pace was slow. Suddenly, a big drum major, bareheaded, barefooted, and his uniform covered with dirt and dust, climbed up behind me and pitched himself headlong into the wagon, groaning, oh dear, I never was so tired in all my life. I don't believe in war anyhow. I saw a chance where by turning out into the field and driving fast, I could cut into the road again much further on. No sooner did my bold drum major notice that I had left the road than he thrust his head out through the curtain and shouted, "Where are you going?" "Oh, out here in the country a little way to rest the team." "Then count me out," said he, and tumbled to the ground, landing on his head. But picking himself up, he ran to regain the road. Then I discovered that my two girls had caught the new panic and were making their exit through the rear. "What's the matter with you?" I shouted. "Us is going back to Washington, we is. We didn't come out here on no picnic for the Confederates to catch." It took me several minutes to explain my movement and induce them to return to the wagon. Along came a party of Ellsworth Zouaves, worn out and footsore, who offered me handfuls of gold to allow them to ride, but I had to use all alike and kept them off. At about 7 o'clock next morning, I reached Falls Church, at which place I had been ordered to halt. Next day, I was ordered to Fort Corcoran, where the brigade followed the day after, and from thence we were sent to Washington and discharged. This article originally came from the New Haven Palladium. This story came from the great state of Virginia, being reported in the Peninsula Enterprise of March 8, 1884. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.